and I started walking up the steps to it, I was like, whoa. You see all these droves of people heading towards it and all the lasers, and it feels like an alien invasion.
These are not some creatures from a sci-fi movie. These are Glastonbury Festival's wildest music stages. And we met the masterminds behind them.
The scrap is essential to what we do. A lot of people think we sit there and sketch and then go and look for the stuff to make it. It's completely the other way around. We rummage through junkyards on a massive scale, find interesting things, and then that leads the sparks of inspiration.
But they don't use any old rubbish. Arcadia's team specialise in ex-military and industry scrap, repurposing everything from amphibious combat vehicles to helicopters that served in the Falklands War.
You think of the billions that are spent on all this military material, and then there's just graveyards just absolutely full of stuff, most of it still in its boxes.
Arcadia are maybe most well known for the Spider, a 50-ton structure with a 360-degree sound system.
Pip and I set off on a motorbike trip around the UK on a scrap hunt in about 2009. And we found a yard up in Birmingham that had these giant crane machine that's designed to scan containers and lorries at ports for migration and drugs and all that sort of stuff, and they had these colossal but really beautiful shaped arms on them, and went back to our little B&B and we modelled them on CAD quite quickly, and they made this really incredible tripod. So we went back the next day and cracked a deal with these guys on the premise that we would go and remove them, and that was the birth of the tripod, which kind of was the beginning of the spider journey. It wasn't until 2012 that it actually looked properly like a spider, but it just took a while to evolve. Like, the eyes of the spider are reverse thrust units from a spy jet, British spy jet, and we managed to find 5 of those in a scrapyard, and we're like, oh, if only we had a 6th one. And literally, Pip got a phone call from someone saying, yeah, I've got one of these kicking about, I'm not sure if you want it. And it was literally like the 6th eye, and literally came in at exactly the right time.
In our sort of more busier touring years, we would get flown to the other side of the world to do like a gig there, and it blew people's minds. And then you think, oh, they're just going to copy it, and then no one's done it.
For Glastonbury 2024, they set out to create a structure even more spectacular. But first, let's go back to the start.
We met around 1990 when we were kids.
I knew Bert mostly because he lived in the next village over, and him and his friends used to come and hotwire the gamekeeper's car that was in the woods and drive it around, and I used to get in trouble for it. Bert went on to do these big tensile structures, and he was off touring with those, putting up these big tents. And I was working with my brother, making big sculptures at festivals. My brother turned us on to military scrapyards, and it was just at the same time as the Iraq War was happening, and they banned protesting within a mile from the Houses of Parliament. And I think for a lot of us, just that moment of realising that actually protesting and getting involved in that world was making no difference, and at the same time when we weren't doing that, we were taking these bits of military scrap, turning them on their head, and making these really unifying, positive environments, and we just realised, actually, let's just put our energy into that, making stuff that's got a totally different purpose. So we met up in a pub a couple of weeks after that, and literally on a beer mat, we scribbled out how all these different fragments of sculpture and art and music and everything could come together.
In 2007, Pip and Bertie took their designs to the founder of Glastonbury Festival, Michael Eavis.
We put the drawing on the table, and he sat there, he didn't look at the designs at all, he just sat and sort of looked at us while we were talking, and then he finished, and he looked out the window at his cows and started talking about his cows. And we were a bit confused, but fortunately we'd been to a farming school, so we could do the lingo when it came to cows for a little bit. And then at the end he sort of stood up and said, it was really nice to meet you, shook a hand. We were sort of walking out the room and not quite sure how it gone, and then I think Bert said, are we on then? And he was like, oh yeah, we're on. And we designed our first stage for Glastonbury, which was in 2008.
Over the years, Arcadia's creations have only got bigger, but Glastonbury 2024 set their biggest challenge yet.
We knew we needed to do something new. We were sent a link to a military auction for an airbase down in Cornwall that was disposing of loads of stuff that was like strewn across this airbase. And we got excited about the helicopters just because they were so beautiful. And it wasn't until we picked it up with a crane that it just hung at this angle and just looked like a dragonfly body. Really, before we knew it, we'd sold the concept to Glastonbury, and we'd kind of taken the plunge.
part of the beauty of the build process. Just seeing stuff like that that had no purpose, like all of a sudden built into something. We had these 2 pilot seats from the helicopter, and they were just kind of sat around doing nothing, and right at the last minute we decided to just make them into like a little dinette for 2 and put that up inside the Dragonfly, so if our artists were waiting they could sit.
Helicopters that we bought, they've all got these registration numbers on them. The one that we used for the Dragonfly at Glastonbury had actually seen quite a lot of active service in the Falklands, and we met people who'd flown on it and just had this really, really deep story, and was obviously part of, you know, a conflict that was really significant in our history. And yeah, it meant a lot to us because we weren't just turning something that had that intent to be a part of you know, a war organisational machine into something that was all about joy and unity. It had actually been on the front line, and we'd kind of flipped it back into a space like Glastonbury, which is completely the opposite to that.
I think the most difficult element to bring to life was the tech. That was something that couldn't be done until we got to Glastonbury.
The Dragonfly, we wanted to be a bit more kind of like beautiful and ethereal. That's why some of the tech effects like the projection mapping and the lasers were kind of more the focus to make it kind of like more electric. But ultimately it's not till you actually get to Glastonbury, you rig everything, you plug everything in and you turn it on, you can actually see what you've created. And that's essentially 2 days before Glastonbury, where if it doesn't work, you can't really get any extra stuff because like there's no cable left in the whole country because it's all at Glastonbury, and you have to like work with what you've got. First show was nerve-wracking. We did it with a collaboration with Fatboy Slim and the Woodjuk Noongar, who are the nation from Western Australia. And so we've got like 50 people that like operate the show live, so they all need to be able to talk to each other throughout the field. Pip, our creative director, he'll be in the crowd walking around like looking at it from the audience perspective and feeding back into front of house.
It's quite fun. People quite often tap me on the shoulder and they think it's a fancy dress costume or something, so they ask me what I'm doing and I'll say, oh, flames, and oh, no way!
And for the DJs playing, it's a whole experience.
It's like no other stage that you'll ever play ever. When I started playing, the front of it was moving, and I didn't realise that. And I was dancing, and then it was kind of throwing me off. I felt like I had to get my sea legs almost. And my manager was behind me filming, and he was doing the same, and it was really comical. Us both trying to not fall over. It's like a piece of art. It's a tourist attraction almost. Like, it's so unusual. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that at any of the festivals that I've been to around the world. I don't think I have. I don't think many people can say that they've DJ'd in a Dragonfly.
The Dragonfly will be back at Glastonbury next year, but the team have been plotting some other projects further afield.
We have a bit of a dream at the moment, having seen the impact and power of repurposing military stuff.
Initially, we're repurposing things that have been to a conflict zone and have come back and are in a scrapyard, and that's quite far away from the people that were affected by that conflict. And actually maybe there's a whole other jump in our journey, which is actually taking the creative stuff into the conflict zone once the war's gone and it's safe to do so, and trying to help in collaboration with those places and people to heal some of the scars from war and kind of really take it much closer to the source.